ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaskar, my dear friends. This is second video on the discourse between says Yajnavalkya and his consort says Maitreyi. This discourse is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the biggest Upanishad among all the important 11 or 12 Upanishads. So in the second video, the discourse continues between says Yajnavalkya and his consort says Maitreyi. So by these three illustrations, says Yajnavalkya tells us that the effect cannot be known unless the cause is known, because the effect is a manifestation of the cause in some proportion. You cannot understand the nature of any object in this world unless you know where from it has come. But you try to understand the why and wherefore of things by merely beholding them with the eyes. Whatever be the extent of your observation in the best laboratory conceivable in the world, you cannot understand things, because whatever is observed through even the subtlest instrument, even the best microscope, etc., is an effect, not a cause. It is a product of certain circumstances. The conditions that have been responsible for the effectuation of these forms that are observing are transcendent, and therefore they are invisible. Unless the cause behind the form that is visible is perceived, the form cannot be really known. If you are intent upon knowing the nature of any object, you must know its relation to something else, and that something else is connected to another thing, and so on, until you will be surprised to realize that everything is connected to everything else in such a way that nothing can be known unless everything is known. So it is not possible to have complete knowledge of any finite object unless the infinite itself is known. You cannot know the structure of even a sand particle in the beach unless the whole cosmos is known ultimately, because it has got infinite relationships to various types of atmosphere of which it is a product. So it will take you up to the limit of the infinite if you try to understand the inner inscrutable majesty of even a grain of sand. To understand this, great master Yajnavalkya gives us three illustrations. Just as the sound that is made by a percussion instrument cannot be properly identified if the instrument itself is far away and not visible to the eyes, but whose sound is heard by you from a distance, unless you catch the source thereof, just as you cannot identify the rhythm produced by the blowing of a conch unless you have the capacity to grasp the totality of the sound by actually perceiving the conch that is being blown at any particular time. Just as you cannot understand the symphony produced by a veena or a stringed instrument, for instance, merely by hearing one note unless you are able to connect all the notes in a harmonious symphony. So is the case with all these things in this world. You cannot know anything. They are each like one note in the symphony or the music of the universe. How can you know the beauty of the music by merely hearing one note? That note is connected to many other notes, and when every note is harmoniously related to all other notes to which it is related, and all the notes are grasped at one stroke in one single harmonious symphony, that becomes music. It is a beautiful. But if only a twang is heard or one tick is heard, it makes no sense. It is not music. Likewise, with any object in this world, it is one twang, one tick, one sound which is really connected to a vast arena or gamut of a symphony that is universally expansive. Unless that total expanse or continuity is grasped by the mind at one stroke, which means to say that unless the infinite being behind the finite objects is grasped by the consciousness, no finite object can be known fully, nothing can be understood perfectly. Therefore, nothing can give you satisfaction. There is no hope of immortality through any possession in this world, is the conclusion of says Yajnavalkya. The sage Yajnavalkya says that the nature of effects cannot be known unless their cause is known. It is futile on our part to investigate into the nature of any finite object without correlating its form and context with the causes which gave rise to its present form in a series which cannot be comprehended by the mind. Every link in a chain is connected with every other link. The pull or force exerted by the topmost link is felt by the lowermost link, even if the chain be millions of miles in length, irrespective of the fact that the lowest link might not have even seen the very existence of the topmost link. The presence of that topmost link will be felt by the pressure it exerts through the age-long length of the chain, of which the lowermost link is a finite part. Even so is the nature of all finite things in the world, and we cannot understand the nature of anything unless we are in a position to understand everything at the same time. Either you know everything or you know nothing. That is the truth of all experience. There is no such thing as knowing something, because that something is a false aspect of the organic connection with which it is related. Minus its relationship, its very existence is not worth recognition at all. The nature of finite objects is very peculiar. They are constituted of the circumstances in which they are placed, so that you cannot separate the circumstances and the nature of the things itself. It is not true that the circumstances are outside and the thing is inside. It is a false conclusion, again, which the mind makes in its untutored attitude towards things. The circumstances are a part of the existence of a thing, and these circumstances are not mere conceptual notions in the mind. They are vital energies, powers. Even space is not an emptiness, as you know very well. It is as solid as a rock, for example, because under conditions which can be experimented upon, even the most solid of things can be converted into an ethereal substance. So the circumstance of space around an object is not an unimportant aspect that can be separated from the existence of an object. But the
incapacity of the senses to perceive non-physical objects and non-physical conditions creates a false impression in the mind that the circumstances are completely isolated from the existence of an object. This is why we make independent notional judgments about the things, distancing them from the conditions in which they are involved, which are ultimately cosmic conditions. The point made out in the Upanishad in this passage is that without the knowledge of the Absolute, not even the smallest of things can be understood.
Now the next passage tells us everything proceeds from the absolute, proceeds in a very peculiar manner, not easily understandable by individual minds. So, the manner in which things are supposed to proceed from the Supreme Being can be explained only through certain analogies by comparisons by visible examples. All knowledge is a partial aspect of the Supreme Absolute, which is knowledge itself. It is not knowledge in the sense of an information about things, but the very existence of all things, which is inseparable from the knowledge of things. And so, any knowledge or wisdom that is worth mentioning is a fraction, a spark, a ray of the Supreme Absolute. Even the highest geniuses of the world cannot be compared with a ray of that eternal profundity of knowledge. Everything comes from that. How does it come? We cannot understand how anything can come from the absolute. We can only give some analogical comparative illustrations, and the Upanishad implies here the comparisons of smoke arising from fire. Just as when you burn wet fuel, smoke may arise from its burning process. Everything may be said to proceed in this manner, as it were, from the Supreme Being, a continuous emanation. It has to be called a curious emanation, as that which emanates has the potential character of that from which it emanates. We are always to remember that we have studied earlier that the nature of the cause is always present in the existence of the effect. So, the effect, which is knowledge, is a fraction of the appearance of the plenum of wisdom, which is the para Brahma, the absolute. Everything comes from that. From the aspiration, as it were, of this eternal infinite reality, all the knowledge of this world has come. Just as when you breathe out, there is a breath coming from your nostrils, the absolute breathed, as it were, this wisdom of all his creation, and all this wisdom of the world put together cannot be equated with a fraction of it. It will be another aspect of this mystery which is mentioned in the following passages. The wisdom of the Veda, which is regarded as eternal knowledge, can be compared to the aspiration of the Absolute. All the four Vedas and all that is contained in them, anything that is implied in the Vedas, the eternity that is embosomed in the Vedas, all these things are emanations from the Absolute. And what else? Everything that is of that nature and everything that is capable of being connected with the Vedic knowledge, such as the Itihasas, Puranas, Vidya, all arts and all branches of learning, secret teachings, verses and poetic compositions, aphorisms, commentaries, anything that you can call knowledge in whatever way, whatever manner, whatever form, all that is contained in there, everything has come from there. The substantiality of all that can be regarded as of highest value in the world is the substantiality of that magnificent being Mahato Bhutasya Nihavasti, the breath as it were of this eternal breathless reality is this vast manifestation, as everything that can be considered as an effect is located in the cause in some way or the other, so are all things located in the absolute in some way or the other. This is interestingly stated in a long passage that follows. The ocean is the repository of all waters. Every water can be found in the ocean. The touch sense and everything that we regarded as meaningful from the point of view of tangibility is located in the skin. Every kind of taste can be located ultimately in the structural pattern of the tongue or the palate. Every smell, every odor, every type of fragrance is located in the structure of the nostrils. Every color, every form, everything that is visible is located in the structure of the eyes. Every sound, whatever it be, is located in the structure of the ears. Even thought, every feeling, anything that is cogitated is ultimately located in the mind. Every feeling, every kind of intimation connected with the knowledge of things is in the heart of a person. Every action, the capacity to grasp things is located in the energy of the hands of a person. Other organs also are mentioned in this manner, making out that all activities of the senses are capable of being traced back to the structure of the senses, so that if you know the nature of the sense organs concerned in any particular action, whether it is the location of knowledge or merely of a locomotion, etc., you can know everything connected with that particular organ. Likewise, you can know all things if you can locate their origin from where they proceed. Again, we have to recapitulate what we have said previously. That is, it is not an easy affair to go back to the final cause of things, because you may be able to perceive the immediate cause of any particular phenomenon, but the ultimate cause cannot be easily discovered, as we are limited by the capacity of the mind and the sense organs. Whatever the mind can think and the senses can cognize or perceive, these only are the realities to us as human beings. So even the minutest investigation into the nature of the cause of any phenomenon or event or object cannot be regarded as ultimate, because the ultimate cannot be comprehended by the mind or the senses due to their own limitations in space and time. But if it could be possible in some mysterious manner, if the ultimate cause could be discovered, then we would be at once in the presence of a flash of illumination, wherein everything is presented before the mind's eye instantaneously at one stroke, as it were. Another illustration is given here to make out the nature of the Supreme Being from whom all knowledge proceeds. If you dissolve a little piece of salt in water, what happens? The salt becomes one with the water. You may take any part of that water, it will taste salty and you cannot find out where the salt is. It has become one with the water, it is everywhere in the water. Just as any part of that water in which salt is dissolved will taste of salt only because of the pervasive character of the salt that has got dissolved into the water, so is the infinite being. How can it? It is a mass of knowledge. It is a solidity of wisdom. It is a substantiality of that we regarded as the highest consciousness. That is this ultimate reality. Wherever you touch, it is that which is touched, and wherever you taste anything, you are tasting that only. And therefore, anything that is seen anywhere is naturally that only, whatever be the corresponding object of a particular sense organ. It is the force of that which is seen, and the mind thinks nothing but that, not knowing it is so thing, so doing. This consciousness, which is solid reality, ultimately the substantiality of the whole universe, appears to locate itself in the body of individual by entering into the process of permutation and combination of the elements earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc. A particular combination in some percentage of these five elements become a body and embodiment. When consciousness enters this particular formation of the elements, it is what we call individual, the jiva, or a particular finite body. It arises in all this form and dissolve itself in this form, as it were. As long as it is connected to this formation of the elements, the birth of the individual and the death of the individual are described here as being the consequence of the association of consciousness with the formation of five elements in a certain proportion. It is the elements, the five elements, which combine in certain ways under different conditions, that are responsible for the objects of sense, as we call them, animate or inanimate, whatever may be. All the objects, all the bodies are really the elements in some shape, color, and tangibility. They appear to have a value, a worth, and meaning because of the entry of consciousness into them. And when the formations change, when there is a different type of formation of the elements, that is called the death of the individual. It is not a death really, it is a transformation, a reformation of the particular form into which these elements have been cast by the need of that unit of consciousness, which is called the jiva. When this consciousness gets entangled in the forms of the elements, it is called birth. When it is freed from them, it is called liberation. When it is freed from the elements, it will not be conscious of any particular thing. Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi that when there is total isolation of consciousness from all its associations in the form of these permutations and combinations of elements called the body, there would be no particular consciousness. There would be no feeling, hearing, touching, smelling, nothing particular whatsoever, no consciousness at all. So bluntly says Yajnavalkya, without commenting on the meaning of this statement. After dissolution, there is no awareness. This is what is meant by this pithy statement. Maitreya, this I tell you, try to understand it. Maitreyi is surprised. How is it? You are saying that it is an ocean of wisdom, a mass of knowledge, substantiality of everything that is consciousness, and now you say there is no consciousness. When there is an absorption of consciousness into itself and freedom from its entanglement with the elements, you say it knows nothing. How is it possible that it knows nothing while it is all knowledge? You do not understand what I say, tells Yajnavalkaya to Maitreyi. I have not confused you by saying this, nor have I mystified you in this contradictory statement. Your idea of knowledge is misconstrued. You have your own definition of knowledge, and from that point of view, from that standard of judgment of knowledge, you seem to perceive a contradiction in my statement that after freedom from entanglement, there is no consciousness in spite of the fact that it is an ocean of consciousness. Our concept of knowledge is well known. It is not real knowledge. It is the ass's knowledge. It is the donkey's knowledge. It is the animalistic perception that we usually call knowledge. The contact of the mind with objects in a particular manner under given conditions is called knowledge, but this knowledge comes and goes according to the circumstances of the objects of particular knowledge of the senses. So to us, knowledge means knowledge of something. This connecting link of is very important. Whenever we speak of knowing, we always say knowing what. So there must be something which is known, and we speak of knowledge of something, studying something, awareness of something, illumination of something, everything is of something. Thus, we are always accustomed to connect knowledge with a content or object which is apparently external to knowledge. This strange relationship between object and the knowledge of that particular that object is the subject of a philosophical controversy known as the conflict between the idealistic and realistic theories. How does knowledge arise is a very great subject. Philosophy, whether it arises by the location of the object in a particular manner, or is the object that is responsible for the knowledge of the object, or whether it is the mind that knows the object that is responsible for the knowledge of the object, that however is another subject altogether. So Yajnavalkaya tells us your notion of knowledge is involved in the concept of the isolation of the object of knowledge from knowledge, so that there cannot be knowledge unless there is an object. And when I tell you that there is no such thing as knowledge of an object, in that condition where consciousness is absorbed completely from all contact with the formation of the elements, you are not able to understand what I am saying. Why? Where there is an object of knowledge, well, naturally it can be known. Where there is something other than the eye can see. Where there is something outside the nose can smell. That is true. Where the sound is outside the ear can hear the sound. Where the spoken word is outside the speech itself, one can speak about something. Where the thought is different from the object that is thought, it is possible to think. Where the object of understanding is different from understanding, it is possible to understand that object. Where there is an object of knowledge, well, naturally it can be known. Where there is something other than the eye can see. Where there is something outside the nose can smell, that is true. Where the sound is outside the ear can hear the sound. Where the spoken word is outside the speech itself, one can speak about something. Where the thought is different from the object that is thought. It is possible to think. Where the object of understanding is different from understanding, it is possible to understand that object. But where understanding only is, and the object of understanding is not there, what is that you understand? If this situation could be envisaged for the time being, if a condition can be conceived of where the object of knowledge has melted into the knowledge itself, what could be the knowledge which one can be endowed with? That which is to be known has melted into the knowledge itself. It has become part of the knowledge. So knowledge is filled with the substance of the object which is known. So much so there is no more an object as such. How can you then say that there is the knowing of anything? Because that anything which you speak of as the object of the knowledge has become knowledge itself, so there is then no such thing as knowing anything, and therefore it is, O Maitreyi, that I said no such thing as knowing exists there and it does not know anything. Where everything is the self of knowledge, what does that self know except its own self? Who is it to see what where the object of perception has become part and parcel of the process of perception itself? Everything is known by the knower, but who is to know the knower? If the knower is to be known, there must be a second knower to know that knower, and the second knower can be known by a third knower, the third by a fourth, the fourth by a fifth, and so on. You go on scratching your head. You cannot know the knower. How can the knower be known? We have already designated the knower as the knower, and you cannot now call it the known. Therefore, there is no such thing as knowing of knowing or knowing of knower. Knowing of objects only is there before liberation. With liberation, that object has become part of knowing itself. It has become one with the knower. The knower alone is. There is no such thing then as knowing. Therefore, as I told you, Maitreyi, it is not possible to have cognition and perception and mentation and understanding in the usual sense in that absolute which is supernal felicity of plenum. Now this subject is continued later on in the Yajnavalkya Kanda of the same Upanishad. It abruptly stops here and takes up a new subject which has some remote connection but not immediate connection. The immediately connected passage will come later on, and Yajna, Yajnavalkya will be speaking to the Emperor Janka, where he says, when I tell you that it does not see anything, it does not mean that it does not see anything. It sees everything. While it does not know anything, it knows everything. While it does not see anything, it sees everything, etc. This will be mentioned later on as a part of the exposition of this mystical statement of Yajnavalkya in the particular Brahmana known as the Maitreyi Ramana. Now a subject that is in way connected with this topic is taken up in the subsequent section. The reason why you cannot have perceptual knowledge or cognitional awareness in the totality of things is because of the fact that everything is connected with everything in that knowledge. You cannot look upon something and judge a thing independently in a condition where everything is connected with everything. You cannot have a standard of judgment in a situation where that which is judged has become one with the standard of judgment itself. This interdependence of things and interconnectedness of values is discussed in a very famous aspect of the Brihadaranyaka knowledge called the Madhu Vidya, which is supposed to be given by sage Dadhanya. So here ends this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks my dear friends.